Welcome everyone. Welcome to the first webinar series from PitchCamp. The first series that we have put together is sales for entrepreneurs, and today we have an outstanding speaker and a fellow friend from the startup ecosystem. We have known each other for over 5-6 years now. And before I introduce him and welcome him, I'll quickly take a minute to talk about what PitchCamp and what its initiative is all about. So PitchCamp, was conceptualized early this year with an intent to help founders to share their ideas better through applied theater techniques. So we do pitch coaching workshops, help you to make your investor pitch decks and your sales pitch decks a lot more engaging and applying applied theater concepts of storytelling, your voice modulation, your body language, and so on. So we partner with theater folks in enhancing your entire pitch story and also help you on your sales journey. This session has been planned for about an hour. We'll have about 45 minutes of Q&A between me and Satej, trying to understand his mindset and his journey on how did he transition from a tech background to a founder CEO who's very actively involved in business development and in sales. So without further ado, I would like to welcome all of you. Thank you for taking time. Extremely excited to hold the first one. We have 40 plus people joined in live right now out of 91 people who have registered. So I assume some more people will join in. With this, I would like to welcome Satej. Satej, welcome to PitchCamp Sales for Entrepreneur Series.
Thanks, Bimlesh.
It's an honor to have you here.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So as I said, Satej and I have known for last 5-6 years now. We were volunteers at NASSCOM Product Conclave 2013 edition. Was an amazing experience, and we've been in touch as fellow entrepreneurs. And I've seen his company grow over the years ever since he started Rocketium. So I'll get started with a brief introduction. So Satej is the founder CEO of Rocketium. Prior to that, he used to head product management at Taxi for Sure. And after the exit is when he got into this space. So Satej, would like to understand prior to Taxi for Sure, what was your background? How did you get into entrepreneurship? If you can share some of that, it will be a good way to lean into today's conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share that. And thanks again for having me. It's I'm happy to hear that lots of founders are a part of this. Again, I'm sharing my story, not necessarily lessons or anything. So would love to hear from you as well. And if you could share some of your stories, that will be a nice interactive session to have. So my own experience, I've been in the industry about 16 years now. Started my career at Microsoft in Hyderabad, working on developer tools. After that, went to the US for my master's in computer science. Worked at a startup after that, which was back in 2008. There was a very early days for cloud computing, so very cutting edge stuff that we were building. Again, on the engineering side, my role over there. After which, for 2 years, I was at Amazon, early team member at AWS. Again, every other day there used to be articles coming out. Hey, what is this cloud? Does this thing really need to exist? What's wrong with what we have right now? So very early days from there, and a 250 member team to today, $40 billion run rate company as AWS. Came back to India after that. After my MBA, I joined Taxi for Sure, where I was head of product. That was my first sort of half foray into business, because that was still partly a product and technology kind of a role. And at Rocketium, I look after product and engineering. Over the last few years, I've had to do a lot of stuff on the sales side. And again, when we come to that, I'll talk a little bit about, as a product person, why sales is probably the most important thing you can do. So I'll get to that a little bit. But as to why I started Rocketium, the idea for Rocketium was in my head since 2005. Ever since it was maybe not even a year since I'd started working, when I had this kernel of an idea. And over the years, I was constantly thinking about it. In fact, Even when I joined Taxi for Sure, literally on my first day, I told the founders, this is not so much of a job and more of a learning session for me to start my own company. When I joined, I was 30 years old. I told them that, hey, by the time I'm 40, I want to get the confidence and the skills to be able to start up. And, for good or for bad, Taxi for Sure sold to Olaf in 2015, after which I had both the confidence and the skills to start my own company at 32. And we just finished 5 years of Rocketium. So I'm thankful to the founders for giving me the opportunity to learn so much and start Rocketium.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, I remember, myself being a very early customer of Taxi for Sure. When it started, and when we met at NASCOM Product Conclave, was great to put a face to the guy behind the product, right? Apart from the founders. So wonderful. So Rocketium, when you started off, cloud was just beginning to take off, and you had this very unique idea of automating, images and so on. So talk us through your early days of your product, from a product idea. What did you do? What was your experience to reach product market fit? Did you take the user approach, or did you take the enterprise approach on the early days of your product?
Yeah. So when I originally started, the idea that I had is very different from what we are doing today. So Rocketium went through a series of pivots, and just like the pivot in basketball or physics or wherever, one foot was firmly on the ground when the other moved. So we started off first as far away from where we are as possible, as a B2C app where people could come in and create mini games that they could share with others. And the core of that idea was the realization that people's attention spans are limited. We are spending more and more time on mobile. So if I give you something to read, Wikipedia has all the knowledge in the world, but how many of us will spend time to read on Wikipedia? So I thought, what if I could share my knowledge, or I could consume somebody else's knowledge and ideas in a short playable game? I would learn so much, I would become so much better. So that as a concept we built some strong tech around it, browser based as well as app based game platform we had built, where you could type some text, select some stuff from a drop down, and we would actually make a game out of it. Interesting idea, but it didn't click with anybody because it wasn't built after any sort of user research or asking somebody. It was an idea in my head. I had a little bit of money after Taxi for Sure's exit, so I said, I want to build this out, let me do it. But then as we took that product and showed it to a few people, we got some feedback from it. We morphed it and made it more into a microblogging platform, but not just text content, but images and videos. So it was, you could compare it to stories that we have. And that time Snapchat used to have stories, others didn't. So ours was very interactive stories that you could stitch together. You could have interactive content like YouTube videos and surveys and polls and those sorts of things. Still a B2C product. Our idea was that we want to grow like a SlideShare, that anybody could come and create this sort of content. As others see it, you would see powered by Rocketium, they would come to the platform, sign up, and we were all enamored drinking the Kool-Aid from TechCrunch, and we thought, we'll build this thing, thousands of people will sign up every minute, and there'll be internet fame. But as we were doing that, we went to different customers, including media companies like Your Story and others. And what they told us was that the format that we had built looked very much like a video. And making a video at that time in 2016 or so was a very hot thing, because
Right.
these very simple social videos were doing very, very well. And people felt that the product that we had created would be very useful for them. So again, at none of these points, we said, hey, how big is the market? Should this really be done? So we were very naive that way. And so when we come to some of the mistakes that we have made, I'll talk a little bit about this. But we just sort of went with customer feedback, saying that, oh, somebody wants it. We spoke with, I must have spoken maybe to about 40 companies, going to various networks that I knew, met people in person, showed them what we had. And pretty much everybody said the same thing. If I have to make a video, I have to go to a designer who will end up taking a day, 2 days, 5 days, or sometimes he can't do it, or take way too long for me to be able to use it. So I want to use your product to make videos. That's how we moved from B2C to B2B. And I wouldn't properly B2B as a use case. It would still be a DIY SaaS product where businesses were some of the users. So we did have normal use cases, happy birthday and travel and food and all of those things. But slowly we were starting to see more and more business users using it. So very large companies, the world's fifth largest financial institution, the world's number one Spanish TV network, the world's largest sports network. All of those guys were customers. And so this journey till this point was already a year and a half into our journey. And
So
when
these, sorry, just to pause you there.
I,
So this Spanish company and this large company from the US that you mentioned, they came in on board on this DIY product
that's right.
on their own. They
Right.
discovered your product on
Yeah,
the internet.
it was a typical bottoms-up adoption of SaaS product. People just Google it or see some reviews somewhere. Somebody has done written
Okay.
about you somewhere. Read that and come to your website, sign up and pay. So very little engagement with users. Nobody would get on a call to give you product feedback. But still, we were happy. We could say that hey, we have all of these large, billion-dollar companies as customers. But honestly, it was one, two, three people in that company, and they couldn't. Now I can look back and see it and accept it, but honestly they didn't care about you. You were just a means to an end. They didn't give even two thoughts to you, which is why even as a founder or anybody, you reach out to them saying, how can I make this better for you, how can I build more features? Very poor engagement we got, right? But at that time we went with whatever signals we had, and those signals were way better than what we had with the previous product. So with thousands of people signing up, people paying for our products, we felt that was a good direction. We kept plowing forward. Fast forward 2 years, we started getting strong signals from a very different direction. People started coming to us and saying, you help people make videos, can you do image also? Then they came to us and said that not just those image and video with a DIY tool, can I take your DIY tool and embed it inside my product? Can I white label it and give it to my customers? And then an interesting use case around automation, saying, I don't want any user interface. I don't want to make it manually. Can I get an API so that programmatically I send you data, you render and give it back to me? So those are very interesting directions that take us from a DIY tool, a SaaS product, to more of a platform where other products are taking our capabilities and making their products better. So that was an interesting direction, and something that validated what we had in mind almost the day we started. We always knew it was going to be a platform. Just given my own experience, Amazon, Microsoft, the startup, they were all developer first. That's why I was pretty pumped by that. So that phase was us moving up market a little bit from this prosumer DIY kind of a thing to SMB. And as we made that shift, we also saw a big change in the engagement that we used to have with customers. It was no longer we are badgering them for feedback and asking them, hey, what can I build for you? From there to those people pushing, saying, can I get this feature? Can I get that feature? Can you add this capability? And churn went down considerably. We used to have double-digit monthly churn. From there, it went down to low single-digit churn. The ticket sizes used to be $40, $50, $60 a month. From there, the average amount that a customer would pay us went to 400, 500, 600. Every other month, that number would go up. And so I'll tell you about the final stage, and that's where we are. And again, like with everything we have done, this is the best decision that we see so far based on the feedback that we are getting. And who knows what's 2 years from now, right? But the same sort of companies that we were trying to go to several years ago, now they were coming to us with the same requirements that originally we had gone to them with. So e-commerce companies, IT services companies, banks, so large enterprises who all have in-house teams which are trying to make content, which typically they do with designers, typically they do it with Photoshop and other tools. Now they are saying, can I equip my team members to make this, make standardized content without really knowing any of these things? So, 15, 20, 50 of these team members who have to create it. And the other one is that same automation kind of a use case, but in a much larger way, right? So large banks wanting to send to tens of thousands of their users on a daily basis. Those kinds of use cases are coming. So today we call Rocketium an enterprise creative automation product. So a lot of buzzwords, but again, every one of those is really indicative of what we do today.
Sure. So I just want to segue, in a couple of points that you talked about. So you said, you received a lot of feedback from the users on what they would want, and that really helped you to pivot, into focusing from DIY to SMB to mid markets. So who was handling most of these conversations? Was you as a founder and the product guy talking to these people in these conversations, or you by then you already had a customer success team and a sales and a product team through which the feedback was coming back to the product team?
Yeah, so the first two pivots that we did, it was just my co-founder and I, because what was happening was there was no real pattern to how the customer, what kind of customers we're getting. The monthly revenue that we are getting per customer meant that having a dedicated sales team, having dedicated account management was just prohibitive. And also, even when we had those, the engagement for those from those customers was very poor.
Okay.
Just because I'm paying you $49, like what am I going to tell your account manager?
Right.
There was no room for scaling that and so on. So all of that feedback we were getting by us talking to our customers whenever we got a chance to talk to them. So as soon as what we were doing was adding that value, customers were more than happy to talk to us. But today, our account management team is our secret weapon. We spend a lot of time almost as part consultants, part product managers, and part project managers trying to solve their problems. So we spend a lot of we get a lot of face time with our customers.
Fantastic. So I'm sure when you're talking to these customers, was there for you to build a different mindset when you had to reach out to these customers, hear feedback, and also pitch, say, an upgraded version of your product? Walk me through that process on especially when you started to move to enterprise customers.
Right.
What side of mindset shift did you have to make as the guy talking about a newer version about the product and cracking a deal?
Yeah, absolutely. So remember, every time we were going through these shifts, we were getting better and better information from the market, better and better reception from people. So as product people, and when I say people, my co-founder is also a product person. We both work together at Taxi for Sure in the product team. So for both of us, that was phenomenal reception that we were getting, especially compared to the times when you look back and it's almost zero engagement, zero connection that people had with you, right? So when we were going and having these discussions, our focus was not so much on how can we maximize the revenue or how can I sell you an upgrade or any of those. It was just we were so hungry for feedback, so hungry for people to care about what we were building, and more importantly, build what people care about. That just those conversations were invigorating for us. So today I am careful not to be involved when pricing or some of those discussions come up, because I'm just so happy for customers to use what we have and to know that we are adding so much value for you, that I'm just saying that okay, go for it. Just you want 20 more users out, don't even ask me about it, just
Right.
start using. So
Yeah,
that's why
that's called the creator's curse.
So, but of course, I also tell my team that asking for money, generating revenue, those are not bad things. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't feel bad that you're asking for it, or you shouldn't feel sad about. I mean, you shouldn't feel that it's some crass thing to do, right? Because ultimately, why is a customer paying you this thing? Are you threatening them to pay? Are you intimidating them with your founderly presence? It's none of that. It's a business decision for them. If you are generating 10x value compared to what they are paying you, they are very happy to pay you. So the fact that they are paying you X should tell you that you are giving them 10x value. I mean, broadly, I'm just saying. But so if you are actually able to get them to pay $1,000 a month, then you know that you are at least giving them $10,000 a month. So there is no problem at all in asking a customer to pay more, because that's a way for you as a founder, as a product person, to actually know how much value you are adding. So that way, I'm cognizant of that fact. But honestly, it's just so exciting to hear about customers and what they are trying to do and learn more from them, that sometimes the actual revenue generation of it falls a little bit on the back burner. But today, now we have smart people who can both keep the customer success in mind and at the same time drive up upgrades. So again, coming to the COVID times that we are going through, even in these times, we've had some of our customers upgrade because they continue to get value, they continue to do more with us, and that's why they don't see any problems in paying us more.
Fantastic. So now that you have been talking a lot about customers, let me ask you this question. So today, total net customers, if you don't mind sharing, in the ballpark range, total net customers, how many of the customers do you have right now on your platform, both DIY and enterprise, both put together?
So we have almost 200 people on the DIY side who pay us on a monthly basis. There is also a segment of customers who are about 6,000 or so who have paid us on a one-time. We have done some lifetime deals in the past just to spread the word and get more of these early adopters to use us. Apart from that, we have about 60 of the mid-market and enterprise customers. So these include anywhere from sort of medium-sized companies across the world, as well as some very large enterprises both in India and in the US.
Fantastic. So now let me come to the crux of the conversation.
Right.
So what are a couple of your strategies that you put in place, or the ideas that came to you as in the initial days before you even set up your sales team to go behind mid-market and enterprise customers? Uh, you looked at India first, you looked at overseas market first, and if so, what segments did you identify? How did you identify? Just talk us through that journey until you kind of close the.
Yeah, absolutely. So one answer I'll give, which will be very unhelpful, is that we were not really able to drive any of this. We were just hanging on, just didn't die. And as the market evolved and reached a place where we were already there, we were lucky enough not to have gone out of business by then, because all the ideas that we have, the largest customers that we have, the exact same ideas, and in most cases, the exact same people we have spoken to 2-3 years ago, and they just didn't want any of it. And today, when the situation has changed, when their own internal priorities have led them to realize this is what they need, they have come to us. So at that point, obviously,
being in the market from a timing perspective, just because of your existence, has also helped to attract a segment of customers.
Yeah, I mean, we were among the many people, I guess, and some of them exist, some of them don't exist. But you know, people always talk about you can't create a market, and when it comes to any, whether it's a team or the product or anything versus the market on the other side, the market always wins, right? And we really saw that in the last 5 years, right? We had all the ideas, all of the ideas that we are doing today were in a blueprint that we had set out in 2016, including some of the more futuristic things that we have planned for 2021. All of them were there in our mind since 2016. I've spent time in the Valley, and lots of people I've met there. There was 2016, I was there for a few weeks. 2018, almost 2 months I was there. Met a lot of smart marketers, smart business people, but some of those concepts just didn't click with them. And the concepts are not very complex, right? Saying to them that you create video content, you create image content, now just personalize it for the people who are seeing it, or create it at scale, because you at least want to try different languages, you want to try different, you have so many products, make it for each one of those products. And somehow they never had a need for it. So you could say I was bad at pitching, you could say we didn't figure out their core need, but honestly, that was not a need that they were seeing their peers doing. They weren't having their managers asking them to do it, so they never thought about it. So today, when some of those needs are in the market and we are there and we have positioned ourselves a certain way, we are able to tap into some of that demand. So at least in our case, and that's why I was saying it's very unhelpful, is because whenever we have gone out, and when I say whenever, before 3 to 4 months, because last 3 to 4 months we've had much more success, and I'll talk about that as well. But before that time, the almost 3.5 years of our existence in B2B, whenever we used to go out to customers with a value proposition, almost never would we have a bad meeting. People would always say, that's cool, this looks really interesting. They call 2 more people to come and see the product, but nobody would ever buy. It would be something cool, something interesting, but not something they do on a daily basis. So the shift for us was to find, whether it was a small use case or a large use case, to tap into something that people are already doing. And knowing that they're already doing it, going to them and saying you could do it better, that was a much, much better situation to be in. And so when many people, and again, I fall into that trap of saying that, hey, what we are doing is so futuristic, and it's a completely new thing that we are doing. For business users, they don't want something completely new. Imagine you in the workplace, you have to come in, you have so many pressures, you have deadlines to meet, you have targets to meet, you have teams to manage. Do you have the time to try something new unless somebody forces it on you? If you're already doing something and somebody comes and gives you a better way of doing it, or what you have as a software or a process is badly broken, somebody comes to solve that problem, that's a much better position to be in. So and this is a example, and I've been away from B2C for a long time now, but a lot of my friends, a lot of entrepreneurs that I meet want to start something in the B2C space. And that is one thing that I tell them, that today what you're really getting in B2C, the market of, is the market of attention. because no matter what your app is trying to do, whether it's shopping or entertainment or dating or any of those, what you want is a little bit of their time. And what part of their time are you going to get? If I'm working for 8 hours, I'm sleeping for 8 hours, I have only 8 hours in the middle. Out of those
Right.
8 hours, I'm spending X hours traveling, I'm spending Y hours eating food, then Facebook, and then I have this much time left. And you want your news app, dating app, whatever app to take that much of your time. Versus
True.
think about the B2B space. 8 hours, if I am a finance person or a marketer or a salesperson, 8 hours, I do most of my time, I'm doing one kind of an activity. And there are only so many players, and there is no sleep to fight with, there is no Netflix to fight with, no Facebook to fight with. And in that time, I can serve somebody. So just think about how much more value you can add for that person versus
Right.
again, no knocking on B2C. There are strong value propositions to do. It's just how you want to think about is somebody already doing this, whether it's B2B or
Right.
B2C, somebody already doing it, how painful is it? Can I remove that pain from them? And anytime I used to read this kind of gyan, saying, are you a vitamin or a painkiller, or market always wins, I used to get very frustrated because I didn't quite understand, because I had not seen the other side of it. The only thing I knew was hitting against a wall and stopping. I just didn't
Right.
know there was a way around it. And when I saw that way, when I saw that today, when we go to customers and say, okay, you have X number of designers, you need 1 week for every creative, right? You need like X days for something. And when they say yes, you realize that you are on the right path. So today, last 3 4 months, we've been able to go to e-commerce companies, large corporates, and be able to tell them what stories and wins our customers have, and how we can replicate that for you. And when that connects, you are on the path to product market fit.
Fantastic. So what I'm nutshell, getting to hear from you is your initial days of value proposition and narrative of what problem you are trying to solve changed to increase efficiency and productivity to help the organization do more with less, and also help the people who are doing their jobs better to do it better with automation tools. Is,
That's
is
right.
that is that
Yeah.
a fair way to put it? To that
Earlier,
changing the value
earlier we were
proposition
going
and
to people
narrative?
with capabilities and saying, "Hey, here are some Lego building blocks. Can you imagine all the things you can do with it? Can you imagine you can do this, you can do this, you can?" And they have never done even one of these. And telling them that you could possibly do 105 things, that doesn't help them. Versus today, going and saying you are already doing these three things. Here are the 5 pain points we know that you are going through. I'll just tell you one story that I had heard, which really inspired me. Zenoti, I don't know if you've heard of
Right.
it's a SaaS company. They've been doing really well. So Zenoti's founder in one of these events he had shared, I really struck with me that story. So what he was saying was he started his own salon, and he realized there were some pain points in managing it, and the SaaS for it was very crappy. So he realized I could build it. And so the way he would pitch that to the senior leadership, founders, whoever, was he used to play the role of a potential customer, try to book a service in one of their spas, and like several of them. He used to try to make a complaint. He used to do four or five other things. And then he used to give a report to them saying that I did this for like 5 of your salons or 5 of your spas or whatever. And these were all the problems I faced. If you used our software, this would not happen. So
Right.
going to somebody saying, I know your pain point, I know what you are going through, and I can solve it, is so much more powerful than saying, hey, here are capabilities, you could innovate and do something interesting and you will get some benefit out of it. Just feels the second one just feels like so much harder to convince somebody, because
Very
people
true.
don't have that mind space for innovation and all of those things. Because just getting even a company our size of 25 30 people, you come to us today and say that, hey, do some strategic initiative to try something new, it's just very difficult for us to take that up.
Got it. Got it. So how? So I'm sure in this, in this journey, when you're chasing mid-market and enterprises, one either from, as you said, the need hadn't got realized, or you are not having, you're not reaching out to them with the right value proposition. What? How did you, as an entrepreneur, going through this journey of rejection, handle it?
Yeah, I think the biggest pain for us was not so much that I didn't win a customer or I didn't get more revenue. It was just, I want to serve somebody, I want to build something that makes them happy, because I wanted to build something. and just not getting that opportunity was frustrating. But the other good thing is, if you're a maker, if you like building stuff, is that you don't need anybody else. You could just keep building, and that's what we
Correct.
did. We could have given up at any number of those points. There was some points of validation at each stage. The first one, the fact that we are building something cool and we had not failed yet, kept us going. After that, we built something when people were saying something good. That was a happy moment. Then some people were signing up, using, paying us a little bit was in. So at every stage, the validation that we were getting, the signals that we were getting, were good enough for us to keep going. So today also you could say, hey, why is Rocket Team not growing 100% month on month, or any other such metric? If I had those, I would be even more happy, even more enthusiasm I would have. But today there are many signals that I am getting that keep me going and keep the team going. So sometimes just building a good product and getting any sort of feedback from existing customers, that keeps you going. But otherwise, it's almost never a no from customers. It's almost always a not right now.
Got it.
Because there is a point when they would have that kind of a need and you would be relevant for them, or maybe another person in the company. It's just again, I'm not saying that whatever you are building, you need to keep building and you need to keep hustling, you need to survive. There are legitimate reasons for you to stop what you're doing and add value in another way. It just at every stage, we got quick enough validation that we were on the right path, that we didn't feel like giving up. But again, I'm not trying to lionize entrepreneurs and say that, yeah, you should have this guts to keep going for 50 years. You should pursue them. That's not what I'm saying. But you should be realistic about, are you adding value? Do people really care about what you have, or is it just uh, you're building for the sake of building?
Fantastic. Cool. So let me take a step back once again, just to help everyone understand. So how did you identify your customer segments, right, across markets? One in India, and second is overseas market. So how did you identify one, the type of industries you want to cover, second your buyer persona, versus the your core decision makers, and what's, so just talk us through this process, and then I'll run you through a couple of other points.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the early days, when we had just put out this self-service product, a lot of people started signing up. That was one way for us to figure out who really wants this. So whether it was a very large company or a single entrepreneur or a freelancer, we found out that most of the users for us were in the marketing space. They were social media marketers, or just general marketers. Very few performance marketers, interestingly. So people are doing advertising and things like that. So we figured out somewhere at the intersection of using it for social media and using by people who are connected to social media was our early set of customers, right? And this is where Murtaza asked this question of Canva. That product was very much like a Canva, but it was Canva for video. We didn't do image, and Canva was at that time only doing image. So at that time, we had this connect that marketers would want this. When we became the platform where we launched our API and SDK, that we launched because a lot of founders or product people or engineers were coming to us, because somewhere either they were building it for their company, or they were tasked by their business partners to say that go and build this thing, and they were looking for a solution. When we figured that out, a lot of our messaging changed to make it more dev friendly, product person friendly, and so on. And after that, this third phase where we are of this enterprise creative automation, there we've realized that again, marketers, but not social media marketers, but people who are doing performance marketing. So it's a lot of large scale advertising, banners and videos and display and things like that. Or people who are in-app merchandising and marketing. So when you open e-commerce app, you see a large number of banners, right? There are a lot of that is driven by category teams and marketing teams. Those also end up becoming personas for us. So somewhere it was having a critical mass of signups from which we could do this analysis. Or second, a lot of inbound conversations that were happening. So that was in the second phase. And by the way, you can see as we were going up market, the channel through which we figured out that fit had also changed, right? So first was probably from signups. So after having tens of thousands of signups, you could see these patterns. The second one was 50, 60 of these inbound conversations happened through which we figured out that, oh, there is something to this. All of these are product managers. All of them want our API. And now when we talk about this enterprise creative automation, There we have specifically narrowed it down to e-commerce, and within e-commerce, those performance marketers and people who are doing in-app merchandising and so on. This last one, again, we had 2 or 3 of our customers who were large ones who were talking about this. And then we said, can we go and validate this? So then we went out and spoke to a large number of e-commerce companies and tried to figure out their workflow. And when we did that, we realized every one of them has this problem. And that's when we realized this is a segment that we should go after. And since then, the last 2-3 months, we've had a lot of wins in the e-commerce space, which kind of validated the direction that we had chosen.
So initially, when you reached out to these e-commerce from an outbound perspective, the whole objective was from a discovery point, or was it to showcase your value proposition to address a pain point? How did you start your conversation with these large enterprise organizations?
Yeah, so at that time, when we went to these e-commerce companies, the image creation of Rocketium was not fully fleshed out. So we used to talk to them mostly about video. And perhaps if you could think of that area, maybe that was not developed well enough, so we didn't get the reception that we wanted. But we used to go to them and say, hey, look at so much video consumption is happening. Look at your product pages. They are only static. And what if you could add videos for every one of them? We have such a powerful API. What if you could make a product video for every product? Somewhere they got it. Somewhere they said, this is interesting, very solid capability, but
not for us.
And now a very similar use case, but when it comes to image, that connects a lot better. So I guess in that sense, maybe we went to the right industry, but we went to the wrong people. So instead of marketing people, maybe we went to product people who didn't have a need for this, because videos would slow down the product load times. It would not lead to the right sort of engagement on the page. But now when it comes to banners and going to performance marketers and visual merchandisers, that became a much more tactical conversation. It was not so much, hey, what if you could do this? It was so much about, hey, you already do this. We can cut your time down by 100 times. It can go down.
Cool.
But it was less of discovery, more of we used to go to them saying, hey, this is how much value we provide to you. Why don't you work with us?
Sure. Fantastic. So I want to come to some of the tools that you have deployed in your organization, and at what. So let me cover the teams and the tools, right? So at what time did you decide that you need to expand your your managing your inbound leads to come to close, and also do you have an outbound team to manage to drive real outbound based lead generation to sales closure?
Yeah.
And what are the trigger points of your journey to decide that this was the right time for me to set up those teams rather than doing everything yourself?
Yeah. So a lot of literature that you read there, people talk about what kind of average revenue per account you need to have for you to be able to afford to have an inside sales team, for you to be able to afford any sort of outbound or even field stuff. So those heuristics exist today, and that way SaaS is very good. Unlike B2C, SaaS has a lot of these repeatable models that it's almost rinse and repeat. You could go through them and almost build out a company out of that without making any mistakes, right? But in our case, we kind of almost followed exactly that, but it kind of happened serendipitously. So around the time when a large number of customers started coming to us with the API request, we said, why don't we start a small this kind of skunkworks team and build that out and see what happens. So this person who was our VP Finance and Ops and today is our VP Business, what he did was he said, let me take one of the marketing person from our team. Let me hire a salesperson just to help me deal with all the demos that are coming in, do those demos, follow up and all of those things. And let me get that going and see what happens. And by the way, with him was also our account manager who was managing some of the smaller accounts back then. But that was the idea, that why don't we start using that? We tried a lot of tools at that point, but ultimately most of it was just on spreadsheets and things like that. After which, when this whole enterprise push happened, this was again maybe about 5-6 months ago, that time we realized that now we have something slightly repeatable. It's not like product managers from every industry are coming and there is no repeatable motion for us to follow to get more of them. Once we figured out e-commerce is a space which we can go after companies of a certain size, certain GMV and so on, we said, why don't we start building out this team? And by then, like I was saying, coincidentally, our ticket sizes per customer had also gone up. So we could actually afford to have somebody going and meeting people. This was just in India, but for the US ones, we are still doing outreach through LinkedIn and cold calling and those kinds of things. And when we started doing that, the volume also went up, and we really needed a CRM at that point. So we did have a CRM before, but more formally starting to use it, looking at that for all our numbers and the weekly reviews that we used to do, those processes we started following. So somewhere for SaaS, these things are known. So if you have a $50 account, it's impossible for you to afford to have any sort of account management, outbound sales and stuff like that. So as your ticket sizes go up, or you have a view that, hey, these early customers are paying us less, but we know that it will be much higher later. If you have that figured out, then it's very easy for you to hire more inside salespeople as well as account managers and things like that.
Fantastic.
One thing I just want to share is that for customer success, today we don't use any dedicated software, even though we've looked at a few. We want to use those, but even without that, just spreadsheets are good enough. And we have pretty solid processes to do onboarding of each one of our customers, make sure all of their requests, concerns, any issues being raised, all of those things are tracked properly. We do regular business reviews with them, send out the right metrics to them. All of those things we're able to do purely on spreadsheets. But for sales, CRM is a very good idea. It's something that you should use. Even if you have founder plus one more person doing it, I think you should end up using a CRM.
Fantastic. Excellent. So I think I'm going to touch on upon the last topic here. So did you really find a difference from being an engineer to a product guy, being the creator, trying to close a deal? Did you find those challenges? And if so, how did you equip yourself with the new skills and knowledge that you needed on, during your entire journey to help you to close deals until you decided to onboard a team?
Yeah. So I think most of so that transition is actually very nicely you've put it. So from engineer to a product person, it's a very nice transition, because as engineer, somewhere other people are defining the contours of the area in which you're going to operate, right? Either it could be requirements documents or tasks, or any of those things are given to you. Whereas as a product manager, you are defining many of those based on feedback that you're getting, let's say from the sales team or founders or somebody else, or maybe once in a while you're doing customer conversations and so on. But when you go from that to being either a salesperson or a founder salesperson, then what happens is, again, that one level of indirection gets taken away. So both. So as a product manager would know, engineer turned product manager would know the complexity of building something, how something has to be built. So they are able to preempt a lot of mistakes. As a founder salesperson, what can be built by the product person, by the engineers. So you can have much better conversations with customers. You can ask the right questions, figure out what has to be built. So you are almost playing partly a product manager's role, partly a salesperson's role. And for the customers, it's an amazing thing for you to have that conversation, because they know, you might be making false promises just to win that, but they know you really want them to succeed, and they know that what they say, those things, if you say, those would be built. So that way, it's a really powerful conversation to have, because both of you want the same thing. You want to build what they want, and they want what you build. But yeah, I don't think, given that transition, I don't think it's at all a bad transition to go from being a product person to a salesperson, because in a way, you are not trying to sell so much as to figure out what you have, do they need, or how can you change it so that they would be able to use what you have already built. So that way, the conversation ends up being quite positive. But yeah, the place where somebody like me might find it challenging, might struggle, is actually asking for money, because you are just so happy they're using it. You almost don't even need money. That validation is enough. But really, saying that the money is there so that you are more serious. And by the way, I want to share that as one point, that a lot of times earlier I used to just say, I'm so happy you are using it, just please feel free to use it. But then I realized, when we are giving it for free, whether it's an API or even a do-it-yourself product, we saw that the engagement was very, very poor. The same people, if they were paying even $100, $200, $500, the engagement would be very different. Because somewhere, whoever, I'm not saying Indians do this, right? Everybody does this. You're paying for it, you want value for money. So you are following up and saying, hey, this thing went down. Versus if it's free, they are almost shy to tell you that, hey, anyway, I'm not paying, why am I going to hassle them on this, right? So
Right.
that way I was very clear in a lot of those conversations that you have to pay me. And also as a founder, when you say some of those things, it doesn't sound like hardball or just negotiating for the sake of it, right? I can tell you very seriously that, hey, I've built this, I know that I cannot give it for less price than this. If you don't want it, I'm sorry, but we can't work together. So they also appreciate direct conversations like this. So somewhere you have the strength as a product person come salesperson. I think you should use that. Some places where you are finding that challenge because you don't feel like asking for that money, I think you should ask them because they are more serious. They'll engage much better with you.
Fantastic. So coming, we are almost, close to wrapping this up before we get into Q&A. Last two things I want to talk to you is, from a sales and a deal closure perspective, if you take the entire sales life cycle, what are some of your key learnings over the years? And if you were to restart and approach the enterprise segment again, how would you have done that different?
Yeah, so the enterprise piece honestly is still a little new for us, but we are constantly asking questions about how we can do it better. So one thing that we have found is that a lot of times we are very eager to get started. So we don't ask a lot of tough questions saying, what would you count as success? What are your metrics that you would say are success? Because somewhere we think, hey, they know what they want our product for. My job is just to be there when they need the product. But a lot of times you have to figure out they have organizational inertia that will prevent them from actually using. Maybe it requires some dev effort that they don't have. Maybe training is required that they may not be able to do. Maybe they don't know how it will be used, right? A lot of internal challenges could be there. So a lot of times, because of the pressure to win a deal or just to get somebody to use it, or get a logo that you can use somewhere else, or any number of constraints like this, you might just be very keen to close somebody. But we have had cases where we were so eager to start working with somebody that we didn't ask some of these questions, and in fact tell them that you don't need to pay us, you don't even need to get started till we figure some of these things out. I know you want to get started, I know we want to get started, but I don't think for these reasons it's going to work. I don't think those are bad conversations to have. I think it's worth asking some of those questions. And in our early days, we didn't ask those questions. Today, we are quite clear about this. We do talk to them about what are your success metrics. And in fact, very interestingly, when I'd had the conversation with our team saying, can you ask them what their success metrics are? I almost got a violent reaction from them saying, why do I want to mess with all that? My job is to be an API. My job is to be a user interface. I'm giving you that. Why do I care about your success metrics? But then once they saw that when customers were churning, we found the ones who were churning didn't really have a strong business case. They hadn't really figured out a lot of things, or they were working on the wrong thing or using us in the wrong way. Those were the ones who churned. That's when they realized, and today they make it a point to talk to all of them and understand what are your success criteria. How will you say in T plus 30 that we have had a success, T plus 60 that we've had a success. So I think it's very important to get them to commit to some of those things and recognize for you that this is how you can call something a success.
Got it. Fantastic. So the last question is, how are you shifting gears and handling the growth during these challenging times of COVID?
So one thing that we've heard from a lot of other founders as well is that you should first keep the revenue that you have. And so that's the number one concern. And for us, like I said, account management, customer success is our secret weapon. So it was not very hard for us to do that. It's not very different motions, but proactively looking at every account. And so we did this exercise going through all the 50, 60 odd accounts and categorizing them basis their usage, basis their business model, basis how much they engage with us, to bucket them into high risk, medium risk, and low risk accounts. And methodically went through all of them, contacted all of them, and very proactively had that conversation saying, we know things might be tough for you. How is it that we can help? Here are 2-3 ideas that we have basis what we've done with other customers. This is how we can help. So that was one thing. So proactively making sure we saw success with customers. Very few of them we had to do some sort of concessions in terms of giving them discounts and stuff like that. Maybe 3 customers we've done that, right? Okay. But in other cases you just can't salvage it, right? They're out of business. You really can't justify for your MRR numbers, for your board updates or whatever, that they should keep paying you. Sometimes it's just not the right time, but the good thing is they remember these things, and when the time is right for them, if they are able to make it through this, they will come back. But if not, the only thing that you prevented was a churn 6 months down. That would have happened. You would get it now, right? But I don't know if that's really what you need to optimize for. So that was the first thing. Second, we have also, earlier we didn't want to position Rocketium as an efficiency productivity play. We always wanted it to be about new revenue and things like that. But today we are going back to that positioning, saying what you're able to do with 10 people, or not able to do because you don't have 10 people, you can use us for. So talking more about the cost savings and efficiency productivity. So that's how we are changing our messaging as well, which is what is connecting. So those are two tactical things that we are doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Satej. Very insightful conversations.
Thank you.
Let me now get into some of the questions that the attendees have put in. Mr. Vivekanand is seeking inputs on, when we say global mid-market, what are the parameters we consider? Revenue, employee size, etc. So for Rocketium, what is the definition of a mid-market customer?
Yeah, so again, there are textbook definitions of all of these things, but honestly, it's more about how your company's interaction with those companies is, right? Because like I said, when we had the DIY product, we had this company was the 7th largest insurance company in the world, or the financial services company in the world, right? And some random person from there had signed up. So just because that company is enterprise, like truly and as enterprise as it gets, it didn't mean that they were an enterprise customer for us. At the same time, you could have a very small company's founders interacting with you, doesn't make them an enterprise. So somewhere it's a combination of the size of the company, the sales motions that you have to go through. So roughly, I'll tell you how I think about this one, right? So DIY, SMB kind of thing is mostly very low touch, almost self-service they're using and going away. So even if it's a large company, you should almost consider that as an SMB. Especially if you're not able to take 1 to 5 of those users and then expand into something. Because think very tactically, if a social media person in some company is using you, can you say, hey, do you know John over here in your company is using our product? And go to the CMO and say that, oh, now there is validation, so now you buy my enterprise license for 1,000 people. That's not going to happen. So that's why you should, it's almost like the company size doesn't matter. So that I would call as an SMB/DIY kind of a use case. When it comes to enterprise, that sale will not purely be you do a demo and they ask for a price and you start using. There it will be multiple rounds of discussions. They will do security audit. They'll have they'll ask you for, so for example, recently started working with a very large e-commerce some $5-7 billion e-commerce company. And they have asked us for stuff like audited financial statements and things like that as part of their vendor registration. So if you are actually going through vendor registration and contract negotiation and stuff like that, and several stages of those, doing pilots, so those are all motions of enterprise. And if you are doing enterprise motions for $500 a month, then that's a big mismatch, right? Except if you understand that, okay, those $500 is for the first 3 months, and then you're going to expand to $5,000 a month or something like that. So somewhere I would say the company size obviously makes it enterprise, mid-market, and SMB, but it's also the kind of interaction they have with you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Praveen had this question that most of your deal closures have been, and what percentage of your deal closures have been inbound versus outbound in the in the non-DIY space?
Yeah, so among all our customers, I would say 95% of them have been inbound. But
Okay.
Because they were inbound didn't mean that the same level of attention, same level of pains to close those customers didn't happen. It was just how did the first conversation happen? After that, the motions are pretty much the same.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. We have one question.
I just want to say that we want more and more of that to move to out. I'm not saying it has to move to outbound, but outbound as a sales motion is something that we want to master. We want to get to a stage where 2, 3, 5, 10 salespeople are repeatedly going through those, hitting their quotas, and that becomes an engine that we can scale.
Fantastic. We have one question from Sagar Manikpure. Great story, Satej. Thanks for being so candid. Given your journey of 5 years with several pivots, how did you manage your finances, cash flow, runway, given a not so small team, etc., while trying to find product market fit?
Yeah, so the early days were, I was just idiotic. I did a lot of stuff just with the blind faith that things would work out. So I had made some money from the Taxi for Sure exit. So the first 2 years I didn't take salary. So till April 15 to September 2017, I didn't take a salary. And at that time, it wasn't like a small team, and we were paying somewhat like market salaries. So that was by then, I think we were a team of 9, 10 people, something like that, when we raised our first round of funding. Again, when we raised the first round of funding, because outside people are coming in like our customers, I couldn't believe that, wow, somebody has so much faith in us. So we said, $300,000 is an okay amount to raise. Even though if I talked a little more to people, other founders, I would have found out that that's really not the kind of amount that we should have raised. If we had the chance, we should have raised more. But yeah, so after we raised the money, we were very careful about how we spent the money, because previously it was all going from my account. After my account ran dry, I had borrowed money from parents. So just knew that the value of every rupee that we were spending. So careful about how we are spending money, but at the same time, we didn't want to compromise on the team's salaries, because we didn't want that hanging over their head all the time, that I'm not getting paid well here for all the work that I'm doing, or any of those. Um, After that, yeah, next round of funding we were able to raise. Again, lucky to have found strong believers, as well as have the previous investors invest again. Um, I wouldn't say we were running out of money, but we were pretty close to running out of money when we raised that second round. But again, we knew our investors had faith in us, and they were seeing our revenues grow, and we were getting good signals from the market. But really, after the second round is when things started working for the business. We got a lot better about actually having monthly targets, meeting those. We got this senior finance and operations person who was my classmate from business school. He brought in a lot of discipline about cash flows and how much to be spending and those kinds of things. So now we are a lot better about it. So even though we've raised money, we will be going out into the market to raise a Series A, but we're almost profitable. If not for COVID-19, we would have been profitable this month. Even with that, right now our net burn is just $6,000 a month. So which is hardly anything, right? So in a couple of weeks we should be profitable. So that's for us. It's a big milestone. But yeah, again, just having spent money from our own pockets, we're just very careful when we got outside money. But yeah, if it hadn't been for outside money, I think our revenues took some time for them to catch up. They wouldn't have paid for the bills.
Got it. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Satej. I think we don't have any new questions coming up right now. Guys, we got last 1 minute or so. Any additional questions? Either you can type in your question, or you could click on raise a hand and you could ask a question. Okay, I have two specific questions that came through email. How useful is it to invest in LinkedIn Sales Navigator to reach decision makers in target market?
Yeah, so LinkedIn Sales Navigator, I mean, if you're a founder, there's no question that you should have it, because you will use it for hiring people, you will use it for outreach to investors, any number of things, right? So for that, it's definitely a good idea. But even otherwise, LinkedIn is good, both because it's a way for you to identify prospects and reach out to them, but also you can advertise on it before you send them cold emails. So if you know the companies and the decision makers in it, you can spend some, it's almost like brand advertising that you are doing, or what some people call pre-targeting, that you are able to show them ads, and when you send them an email, they would have some recollection of you. They would have seen a case study, they would have seen some success story, and so on. So LinkedIn generally is good that way. We have not been able to justify the ROI from LinkedIn in terms of saying we put in 5 rupees into LinkedIn and we get some results out of it. But you almost want to think of it as, so LinkedIn Sales Navigator, just those $65 to do outreach, that I don't think there is any question that that's useful. But the advertising side of it, I would just think of it as a brand spend, and spend a little bit on, especially if you have a target account list and prospects within that. it's a good idea to reach out to them through ads. But otherwise, I would say doing outreach through LinkedIn is a fairly good idea, because once they accept your connection request and you are sharing useful, insightful things that build your credibility on your social network, they are, if they accept and they don't reply to your inbound request, they're at least seeing your updates. So over
Right.
3 months, 6 months, 12 months, you will be making a strong impression on them.
Right. Got it. Ashwin had a question. I think it just dropped it. Ashwin, can you raise your hand again? Yeah. Yes, Ashwin. Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, Satej, it was very wonderful session, like a lot of the
Thank
inputs,
you.
and I can closely relate. Okay, each and everything, being a, the tech founder turning into the salesman now, right? Okay, the journeys which you go through, I can relate each point over there.
Thank
Right, one question, okay, like when you went from the open pricing, like I want to understand your pricing journey, how it started, and what was the course correction point where you thought that, okay, fine, we are undercharging, okay, how can actually I go and correct it out, that stuff. And also the another point with respect to the custom pricing versus no, a open pricing thing. Okay, now if I see your web page, you have two sections over there, right? One, you just talk about for DIY thing, it's already open, and for the automation thing, you closed it out, right? So any strategy or any thinking around that thing, that will be helpful.
Yeah, good question. So pricing is something during our DIY times we changed it a lot, experimented a lot with it. But again, that's not what you're asking. But it definitely helps to have open pricing so that people at least have a benchmark, because it's not so much for the people who are okay to pay for you that they'll get scared seeing a number. It's more for the people who there would be no chance that they would pay you. At least seeing a 499, 999 number over there, they will not reach out to you. So somewhere
Right.
it is not good for you to lose some of those people in the early days, but you have a good sense after a time that if people who are not able to pay even a 199, they end up not being good customers. So earlier again, because we were trying out something new, or generally the area where we operate is kind of new, so we were happy for every customer that we used to get. But then we realized that people who are not able to pay even that 500, and now we have realized 500 or $1,000 a month is a good benchmark to keep, because people who are not willing to pay that much are not willing to put in that much seriousness into that entire initiative, and most chances are that excuse me, that it will not work out. So that said, we do make some exceptions for people, especially when they are just very new companies and so on. We allow them for like a $300 a month and so on. But otherwise, how we do our pricing today is we tell them that there is a platform fee, and the platform fee is because we spend enough time with you, try and understand your use case. There are dedicated dev and design resources if needed to enable your solution. No custom work, but again, there might be features that you might need which go into the platform, benefit all customers. But we tell them that you have to pay this $1,000 platform fee, which also gets you some usage credits. So in the early days, if you're just trying it out, this platform fee gets you that much. Beyond that, you will have to pay usage fee basis a slab. So you say that $500, $1,000 on top of that. And somewhere we have seen that this way of putting together our pricing is far better than what we used to do earlier. In fact, so we do a hackathon every 3 months. And in one of the hackathons, we did this pricing strategy, a complete revamp of that. Earlier, we used to tell people that we will do $300 to begin with. And for $300, you get 100 videos or 300 images. That's how we used to talk about it. And that used to sound very high to people. And then now today, when we say you have to start at $1,000, and for $1,000 you get account manager, dev, design, this, all these, plus we give you 100 credits free. So you are
Oh,
paying $1,000 for those 100, but it feels like more value to you than the 300 we are giving, because the other values that we were giving, those were not really being spelled out. So people said, "Oh, what, $300 for 100 of these? That's too much."
got
And
it.
now for the same 300, people are paying 1,500, 2,000, or whatever the amount might be. But we try and stay as consistent as possible, because we also don't want hundreds of pricing this one. But it's absolutely okay to do value-based pricing.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ashwin. I think we'll get into the last question, and we'll wrap this up. There's a question that's again come on email. Does email marketing work, and what's the best way to engage leads through email marketing?
So email is something we've not done too well because in the past we've tried to send out newsletters. We've tried it on and off a little bit. We've done cold email in so many different ways, and somewhere that also hasn't really worked. But again, we are also always getting better at figuring out our target segment and who those people are and stuff like that. But today for us, primarily it is LinkedIn that we are using for outreach. Email somewhere hasn't worked. But this month we are also starting an initiative to take all the hundreds of past leads and prospects that we've had and sending them useful information, including webinars that we'll be conducting every week. So that's something. The story is yet to be written for us, at least.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Satej. I think we've come to the end of the session. And thanks so much for sharing your insights on the Sales
Thank you for having me.
series.
Yeah.
So thanks again, everyone, and thanks, Satej, once again.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here, and see you on the other side of this.